I am Silas Night. Welcome to the very first episode of my new podcast, Buried, where we are going to be discussing what happens when the system breaks down, when death investigations specifically go wrong, whether they are rushed or they're buried just out of pure convenience. A little background about me: I am a medical legal death investigator. I work as a deputy coroner. I'm not going to tell you where. And I have worked literally hundreds of scenes. I've worked every cause. I'm not cause. I apologize. Every manner of death. A lot of natural. I've worked accidents, suicides, homicides, and undetermined causes, manners of death, rather. And I know how early decisions made by either coroners, investigators, medical examiners, investigators, law enforcement, or even fire, EMS can permanently change the outcome of these cases. Um, Sometimes these are bad judgment. Sometimes these are lapse in training or lack of training. Sometimes they're outright negligence done purposefully. So, what I'm going to focus on in these episodes is going to be strictly the procedural errors, the legal ramifications, the legal requirements of ME's office, coroner's offices, everything like that. I am not going to get into conspiracy theories. I am not going to get into how the family reacted, how the friends reacted, how anybody who's not law enforcement or a professional in this field did anything. We are strictly going to look at this from a medical legal death investigator's point of view, someone who's done this job a lot, who's had cases like this. And in the first episode, we're going to look at the death of Kendrick Johnson. This is a pretty popular true crime one. 17-year-old high school student found upside down on a rolled up gym mat inside his high school gym. Official ruling by the GBI, Georgia Bureau of Investigation, is positional asphyxia. From the beginning, this was heavily contested. Some things we're going to talk about: the scene being compromised before the coroner arrived, the surveillance footage, as far as from an evidentiary standpoint, what happened when his body was exhumed for the second autopsy. And like I said, this is not an episode about conspiracy. This is procedure. This is about what should have happened and what did not happen. So if you are not familiar with Kendrick Johnson, here's just some background notes. Kendrick KJ Johnson, he was 17, born October 10th of 95. He was found dead January 11th, 2013. He was 5'10", athletic, participated in track and field. He was kind of known as a quiet, respectful, focused kid, kept to himself. He was physically fit, which is important. Not associated with any gangs, drugs, criminal activity. So his parents, Kenneth and Jacqueline Johnson, and he had a younger sibling that also attended Lowndes High. I believe it's Lowndes. As far as his family dynamic goes, they were active in his life. They were supportive. They were deeply involved after his death. I know this doesn't sound that interesting, but I will tell you that I have had in my tenure as a coroner, deputy coroner, death investigator, a lot of families that are not involved, don't care, and ultimately wash their hands of a decedent and have nothing to do with them. So it's important to know. So after he died, the family did not accept the ruling of accidental death. They commissioned 2 private autopsies. They pursued legal action. So once again, we're not going to get into that too much. So this was Lowndes High School in Valdosta, Georgia. It is one of the larger high schools in southern Georgia, about 3,000 students. Just to throw it in here, it was a predominantly white student body. It's a southern town. It does have a long, complicated history of a racial history. And ultimately that was skewed how the case was shaped, viewed locally and nationally. So he was found in the old gym, quote, at the high school. This was not the primary athletic facility. This was used for sports equipment, storage, and low traffic overflow practices. He was last seen the day prior to his discovery and he was reported missing the evening prior. So Valdosta, Georgia is in Lowndes County. It's got 56,000 people. It is a mixed racial demographic, but it is historically segregated with social and institutional dynamics. Not a big deal as far as what we're going to do, but I want to give in-depth background. So the Lowndes County Sheriff's Office handled the investigation. The coroner and the sheriff at the time had a pretty contentious relationship. And I've seen this happen firsthand. It can be argued that their contentious relationship impacted the protocol at the scene. So as a community, initially pretty divided on accepting the accidental theory. A lot of locals ended up accepting it. So getting into the timeline leading up to Kendrick Johnson's death. So once again, I'm kind of approaching this as I would approach any death investigation. So I want to know what he was doing, social history, activities, change in routine, change in behavior. So January 9th is a Wednesday of 2013. He attends classes at Lowndes High, normal, no issues at home or school to report. He attends all his after-school activities with his usual patterns, and there are no red flags noted by family or teachers. So an important bit of context here, Kendrick did often share shoes with another student to save money, and he kept an extra pair in the old gyms. The old gym. And we'll talk more about that later on. January 10th, 2013, this is the last day he's known alive. He attends school as usual. School surveillance footage puts him walking through the halls, heading towards the old gym between 1:09 and 1:27 p.m. There's no footage of him or no clear footage of him leaving the gym after that. And then later that day, he fails to return home. So family, obviously, they start calling the base. This is typically where people start with missing persons. Friends, classmates, anywhere he might have gone and not told anybody. Nothing, no results produced there. So family can't locate him. They call to report him missing to the school and to the authorities. School officials, they say he may have gone to a sporting event, but they did not provide any confirmation. I am here to tell you that waiting 24 hours to report somebody missing is a myth. If a police officer tells you otherwise, find a new police department. If you're at a local level, go to the county. If you're at a county level, go to the state. If you're at the state level, go to federal. Just do whatever you have to do. 24 or 72, whatever hours they tell you have to wait is untrue. So that night, the 10th, family is going to start their own search. They start on the school grounds. They don't find anything. January 11th is a Friday. Still not accounted for by the morning. His mom goes to Lowndes High, and is very insistent that they keep searching for him. Around 10:30 that morning, a student notices a sock coming from the rolled up wrestling mat. Upon closer look, the body is visible inside the mat, upside down, wedged vertically. 911 is called by school staff. Lowndes County Sheriff Office responds and begins processing the scene. So this is where our first crucial failure comes in. A gentleman named Bill Watson was the coroner. He is not notified immediately and does not arrive for 4 to 6 hours. The body has been moved at this point and photographed by law enforcement. Watson said in a direct quote, "I was not notified in a timely manner when I got here. The body had been moved. The scene was compromised." So from a procedural standpoint, we're going to start right there. There is only a few, and I'll get into this a little bit more. There's only a few instances in Georgia, in Lowndes County, where a body can be moved without the coroner's consent. And that's going to be to preserve the condition of the body for evidentiary value. So if the body's outside and they believe that trace evidence or something like that can be ruined by rain or an impending storm or a tornado, something crazy like that, the body can be moved without consenting the coroner. And 2, the body can be moved to preserve life. So if you have someone who's deceased, and they're on top of somebody who's alive, you can move that body to save the person underneath of them. So that's a pretty simple example, but that just for context, that's when a body can be moved. As far as notification goes, the actual text, and I'll get into this later, of Georgia law in Lowndes County is that the coroner needs to be notified or made aware immediately upon the discovery of a dead body within his jurisdiction. So 4 to 6 hours, not going to cut it. Absolutely, there is no excuse for that. So Kendrick's body is removed from the mat and transported to the GBI, Georgia Bureau of Investigation. Officially, they rule accidental positional asphyxia. So getting into some more background on the gym, it was not used for daily athletic activity anymore. It had been repurposed for equipment storage. There was all these big wrestling mats. They were kept upright in the corner of the gym. Some people cut through there during the day. It wasn't officially closed off. Lowndes High School did not have enough lockers available for all the students. And if you want a locker, a lot of them required a rental fee, which a lot of students and parents opted not to pay. So a lot of students, Kendrick included, store items like shoes in these upright wrestling mats. So not an uncommon practice there. So coming in to the surveillance footage, Lowndes High School had multiple security cameras. They had some in and around the old gym. Like we said, timeline-wise, he's walking towards the old gym at 1:09 p.m. Between 1:09 and 1:27 on January 10th. This is the last time he's seen alive. There is no footage of him exiting the gym. Or if there was, it no longer exists. So big issue with the footage as far from a law enforcement standpoint. One, the school did not immediately turn over the footage. The footage was compiled and released several days later. And then when it was released, it had gaps, inconsistencies in the video files, missing segments, skipping ahead by as much as 20 seconds. The school said that the recordings were motion activated, the cameras were motion activated, which would account for some of the gaps, not all of the gaps. And the feeds were not synchronized, which made it pretty difficult to establish a timeline. So this delay obviously creates public concern. And now I'm going to move into why this should have been seized right away. So, under legal doctrine, law enforcement can and often should seize potential evidence immediately, especially at a death scene. And now this is covered under what's called exigent circumstances. So exigent circumstances means that if there's a risk, it could be lost, altered, or deleted, that evidence needs to be seized immediately. Now that you might see police, cite exigent circumstances for things like cell phones where text messages or pictures can be deleted. Now, seizing this does not give you the right or the ability to go through it. So if I seize somebody's phone because under exigent circumstances, I think they have, I'll use an example that we run into a lot. For drug-induced homicide, we seized phones. That just doesn't give me the right to go through it. I need a warrant. But if I believe that the information contained in that phone may be altered, destroyed, or deleted, then I need to seize that phone immediately. So letting them compile, the district officials compile the data and hand it over days later, it's a huge break in evidence preservation. Huge. It might be ruled accidental, maybe not. It definitely violated the best practices for chain of custody and scene preservation. And this is especially hotly debated because video is volatile and easily alterable form of evidence. So big time gaps can be gone. Whole days, whole hours, everything can be completely erased with pretty much no recourse or way for them to go back and find that. So, from a legal standpoint, exigent circumstances, they should have seized that evidence immediately, no matter what it was, whether it was a central computer that held it all, a backup disk drive, whatever it was. Law enforcement should have seized that immediately. So, moving into coroner laws in Georgia. So, types of death that must be immediately reported to the county coroner or medical examiner include violent or accidental deaths, sudden or unexpected deaths, suspicious or unusual deaths, especially involving individuals under 16, and deaths unattended by a physician. So, this is not really unique wording to Georgia. This is pretty standard across the country. This Kendrick falls under a couple categories. Unsure at the time, but since it ultimately was ruled an accident, he definitely falls under violent or accidental deaths. He was an otherwise healthy 17-year-old, so sudden and unexpected would definitely cover this. And then suspicious or unusual deaths. Obviously, the circumstances are suspicious. It's a very unusual thing. It doesn't happen all the time. And lastly, he may fall under deaths unattended by a physician. So if he doesn't go to a primary care doctor, if he's never had any health issues that he's gone to a doctor for, he is not attended by a physician. So his death falls under not attended by a physician. So there's no loophole here. Law enforcement should have called immediately. So once the coroner's notified, this once again is pretty standard across the country, but I pulled this specifically from Georgia law. The coroner is legally required to immediately take charge of the body. So a lot of places get this wrong. I run into this sometimes. The custody of the body or taking charge of the body does not start once you call the coroner. The taking charge of the body or custody starts as soon as that person is pronounced deceased. So if you call an hour later, you still, in that hour time, are not allowed to touch or move that body. So the custody of the body goes to the coroner immediately. Another legally required duty of the coroner is to conduct a full investigation to determine cause and manner of death, coordinate with law enforcement at the scene, and ensure proper documentation and proper evidence handling. These are outlined under Georgia law OCGA 451625. So if you want to go and look it up yourself. Lowndes County specifically, their standard operating responsibilities, these come from their website. The coroner's office there is 24/7, and they are tasked with investigating deaths that are homicide, suicide, accidents, sudden, unexpected, or medically unattended natural deaths. This is from their office, not specifically Georgia, but specifically Lowndes County. The office will also arrange autopsies through the GBI when necessary. So to break down some of the procedural failures in the Kendrick Johnson case. Bill Watson, the coroner, he's not notified immediately. 4 to 6 hours after the body is found, he arrives on scene. Absolute direct violation of the legal reporting expectations for a suspicious youth death. This is way beyond a slip of judgment or an honest mistake. 4 to 6 hours is pretty intentional to not have the coroner come to the scene, especially if you're going to be manipulating. So the scene's compromised. By the time Bill Watson gets there, the body's been moved and the scene's been photographed and partially processed by law enforcement. So this is the problem I run into sometimes as far as things on the scene being moved. Law enforcement in my area, they're pretty good with not moving the body. But they do have a tendency to move things in the scene, which is fine because the way it works where I'm located is the coroner has jurisdiction over the body. The law enforcement has jurisdiction over the scene, and it's their duty to create me a path to the body. So they are allowed to process the scene. They're absolutely not allowed to process the body without me. So we're violating the coroner's statutory right to take control of the body. And in Georgia, control the scene prior to the movement. So couple things, caveats, if you will. Given his positioning and that he was head down, they probably were not able to determine in situ if he was deceased. Given his age and the limited visibility of his chest movement and things like that, limited pulse points and things of that nature. Pulling him out of the mat before he's pronounced, if EMS gets there, not something that I can comment on is correct or not. I don't know the condition or what they saw on scene, but I would say given his age and the limited access to him, that EMS probably would have made the determination to remove him from that mat in order to provide any and all life-saving measures. Now, that being said, as soon as he comes out and his injuries are seen to be not compatible with life, or there's obvious signs of death, such as cold and stiff in a warm environment, lividity, rigor mortis, things like that, that should have been where it ended. So we failed to establish jurisdiction. The coroner, Georgia law gives a coroner jurisdiction over the body until a determination of cause and manner is made. So jurisdiction not properly exercised or preserved. Okay. And this could go back to the relationship with the sheriff. It doesn't matter. I'm just going for procedure. So Georgia law says no one, and this is OCGA 451629. Georgia law states no one may move or authorize the removal of a body until the investigation is completed and the coroner or medical examiner gives positions. There is a narrow window of exception. If neither are immediately available, a peace officer may temporarily authorize movement to a secure facility, but only under specific emergency conditions. So obviously this does not apply to Kendrick's case. There was no such emergency present. There's no evidence that Bill Watson was not available. So in this case, I would say we're not only violating the spirit, but the letter of this statute. Moving into the cause. Positional asphyxia. I don't like the term positional asphyxia on a death certificate. I don't like the term postural asphyxiation on a death certificate. The deadpan definition is positional asphyxia occurs when a person's body position prevents them from breathing adequately, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so this is going to deal with obstructions to the diaphragm, restrictions in the airway movement, or oxygen deprivation without trauma or external force. Typically, common causes are going to be elderly or intoxicated individuals who fall or collapse in awkward positions, infants in cribs or car seats, people trapped in confined spaces where the torso is compressed or bent sharply. Typically, on a death certificate, if I was going to sign out a death certificate, then I would pair this with another factor. So this would be like positional asphyxia due to alcohol intoxication, or due to physical inability to reposition due to advanced age. So positional asphyxia on its own, pretty uncommon in healthy, alert teenagers, not something that is seen a lot. So the mechanism where positional asphyxia comes into play, oxygen intake is blocked or reduced, restricted chest expansion, neck angulation, compression of the diaphragm. So being upside down for long periods of time, like Kendrick was, even short periods of time, can result in venous pooling in the head and neck, facial swelling, red or purple lividity, and cerebral congestion. So survival time's gonna vary on inverted people. One of the things that I think was missing from this case specifically, and had I strictly, from my point of view, had I been an investigator and I went to that scene and they rolled that mat out and there were no scratches, no torn clothing, no broken fingernails, I would be incredibly suspicious that he was alive when he went into the mat. Typically healthy people, especially a healthy athletic teenager like Kendrick, they are going to show some signs of panic. So they're going to have some attempt to shift their body or escape. They might vocalize. He may have screamed. This was in school during class hours. So, as a death investigator as a whole, I'm already, if I'm walking up to this scene, I'm already suspicious. So, positional asphyxia from a professional standpoint, he's not intoxicated, he's not physically compromised. Well, is it likely he'd be able to extract himself? Maybe, maybe not. The mats were about 6 feet tall. He was about 5'10". His shoulders, I believe, were 19 inches across. The mat's opening was 14, so he'd really have to be shoved in there. So self-extraction, probably unlikely. Yelling for help, definitely likely. Struggle, 100%. No scratch marks in the mat, no abrasions on him, no broken fingernails. These are all things that I look for in every death, but especially in a death like this. And then a lack of compression injuries, which you would expect given that he was wider than the opening of the mat. So the idea of positional asphyxia, according to the GBI's autopsy, is that he reached into a rolled up wrestling mat to grab a shoe, slipped in head first, he got stuck, and then he suffocated. So let's walk kind of through that a little bit, why that doesn't make sense. And I already touched on some of these. So he doesn't fit in any categories of people who would typically be affected by positional asphyxia or postural asphyxiation. I would assume that Kendrick would have the strength, the body control, and the mental clarity to try to get out, or make a noise. He was surrounded by students during the day, and nobody heard anything. So a couple reasons I would assume that he was probably not alive when he went into the mat. The mats were 6 feet tall. Like I said, he was 5'10". He was found fully inside the mat, head down, shoes at the bottom, feet not visible. It doesn't really line up with somebody who's reaching into something. And I'm just talking from a post-mortem standpoint. If I was investigating this death, I would 100% be suspicious about someone putting most of their body weight into a mat. He was not stupid, and he had to know the mats were taller than him, and he had to know that going into them means that there was a possibility that he wouldn't be able to get out. So like I said, Kendrick's reported shoulder span 19 inches, the diameter of the mat 14 inches. Just from an investigation standpoint, this is what he would have to do. This is what I would run through in my mind, if I was an investigator on this case, is walk through the steps. So he would have to force himself into the mat by compressing his shoulders while hanging upside down, not leave any visible external trauma on his shoulders or arms, and then not attempt to self-extract. No fighting, no twisting, no clawing, no shift of the weight, no defensive injuries, no abrasions on his arms or shoulders, no torn fingernails, no evidence that he attempted to get out. So, not really consistent with what I would say would be a healthy teenager that probably had a few minutes of consciousness left before he passed out. So, and then once again, if we're after a shoe, why not just tip the mat over? In my line of work, I always tell people, if it sounds like it doesn't make sense or it looks like it doesn't make sense, then it doesn't make sense. So, playing devil's advocate for the positional asphyxia. So, if I'm going to say that I support the official narrative, he was known to store his shoes in the old gym. Other students confirm this is an informal practice. The surveillance does show him entering the gym. No one's chasing him. There's no signs of confrontation. No one follows him into the gym for another several minutes. This might give him time to lose consciousness. The gym was the old gym, not in regular use. and it is possible that no one was around to hear him. So the official narrative is he dropped the shoe, attempted to retrieve it, slipped in further than he could, get himself out, accidentally or otherwise. He became trapped upside down. It's a 14-inch diameter mat. He couldn't expand his chest properly, couldn't reposition himself, and he's inverted. So increasing pressure on the diaphragm, blood's pooling in the head and upper chest. We're getting cerebral congestion, unconsciousness, asphyxia within a couple of minutes. The GBI says no evidence of trauma, no broken bones, no internal hemorrhages, no scratches or abrasions, no substances in the toxicology that impaired his ability to react, therefore, accidental positional asphyxia. So, a couple things that support the GBI's official narrative. He does not have any signs of restraint or injury, doesn't have any evidence that someone tampered with the scene in a way that could be forensically proven, but we've already covered that the scene was compromised. The position and orientation of the body is plausible. And if he had a quick loss of consciousness, he would have had a limited ability to fight. So, once again, if you hear hoofbeats, you think horses, not zebras. If you're lazy, sorry, but if you're lazy and, they're confined, inverted, no signs of external violence, positional asphyxia is considered first, and we don't look any more into it. So, without a clear sign of a homicide, a lot of forensic examiners will default to accident if the physiology can support it. Asphyxia leaves pretty subtle signs. Once again, it's kind of a default that a lot of pathologist stuff will back up to. So, a couple more things to go through here. As far as the limitations of the GBI's theory, like we covered, his shoulders are wider than the mat. Facial swelling was present, but not in an intensity associated with extended inversion deaths. Coroner didn't arrive till hours after discovery. Early lividity and position evidence is compromised. I will tell you from firsthand experience with a lot of deaths, blood pools very quickly, and if you are inverted, if you are face down on a flat surface, you get a lot of blood pooling in your head very quickly. Gravity is a hell of a thing, and it does not discriminate. So, moving on here to the missing organs. So, and this is once again just a medical legal breakdown of this. So the second autopsy is performed in June of 2013. Dr. William R. Anderson has the body exhumed, taken to the funeral home, open him up, organs are missing. Got newspaper in there. So we don't have the big organs, brain, heart, lungs, liver. Almost impossible to determine a cause of death, unless we have like some sort of incredible physical trauma. So GBI says we put all the organs in there. Lowndes County says the organs were too decomposed and were discarded during or after the autopsy, and the funeral home says that they got the body without organs and filled the cavity with newspaper. They assert that conforms with burial protocol. I refute that. The professional standard is cotton, a sawdust-like material. In cases with like missing organs, like organ donation, newspaper is not consistent with the best standards in the funeral industry. It's pretty frowned upon, and it's a very old school way of doing things. So, the Johnson family filed a complaint against the funeral home, which I believe is completely justified. They allege that it was a potential cover-up of the... I think they just mishandled his body. So, I'm going to kind of walk you through a typical autopsy. So, at the autopsy, The Y incision is made, the organs are removed and examined. And if you're a decent coroner's office, you take what's called histology samples. You take a small sample of every organ. The organs go into a bag, a thick plastic bag, and they go back in the body, or they go in the body bag and they go back to the funeral home. The body's then cleaned and inspected. They kind of go through what's necessary for restoration, embalming, and viewing. And then they note all the damage. Let's call it damage for argument's sake from the autopsy. And then, as far as the body cavity goes, they are going to first. They may leave or remove the organs. That really depends. If they're missing, let's say for a donation, they're packed with an absorbent material. Like I said, you're looking at cotton wool, powdered drying agents, sawdust-like filters, cavity chemicals. This is going to stabilize the body and prevent the collapse and then control decomposition. All right, full disclosure, I go get a pizza out of the oven and I am back. So, moving on. So we've got the cavity filled. Next thing we're going to do is embalm. So embalming fluid right into the vascular system. This is going to preserve all of the tissue. It disinfects and preserves the body. The Y incision is closed and reconstructed, and then everything's documented. So newspaper, not a thing. Not anymore. It is not absorbent, it is not sterile, and it decomposes. Think of paper out buried underground. It grows bacteria, especially with moisture. So, super outdated practice, not professional, not accepted by modern funeral standards. Even in underfunded mortuaries, basic absorbent materials are pretty inexpensive and expected. So the organs were never returned to the body post-autopsy, or they were removed by the funeral home. Whether the GBI did this, whether Lowndes County did this, or whether the funeral home did this, all of them were in the wrong. There is no such thing as too decomposed. I have personally had autopsies that I've been present for, assisted on, of people who are decomposed by weeks, like 3 weeks, and never have I ever seen a pathologist discard of an organ. There is no such thing as too decomposed. It just doesn't happen. He was dead for missing for only a day. There should have been little to no decomposition at all, unless that gym was 110 degrees. No chain of custody is ever filled out, which is another big problem. So newspaper, not illegal, highly unprofessional. Nobody took accountability for this. No documentation for the organs. This is an evidence handling no. So negligence, miscommunication, deliberate avoidance, whatever it was, evidence is gone, and as far as I'm concerned, they're all to blame. So, just as a wrap up, thanks for sticking around with my first episode of Buried. I promise these are going to get better as time goes on. This is my first ever segue into the podcasting world, and I hope that if you've made it this far, that you're patient with me. So there's a lot about this case that's picked apart in media, lawsuits, online forums, stripping all that away, which is kind of what I aim to do with the Buried podcast. The very simple question is, did the investigation follow the rules? Did the responding officers, detectives, coroners, deputy coroners, funeral home staff, did we follow the rules? And not just best practice, did we follow the rules that are outlined in the law? And the simple answer when it comes to Kendrick Johnson is no. The coroner's not notified on time. The scene and the body are not preserved. The organs are not accounted for. The story doesn't match the evidence. And instead of slowing down, in this case, the system doubled down. So what happened to that young man? I don't know. But I can tell you this: if you start an investigation with a bad assumption, and then you couple that with mishandling the body, if you ignore the parts that don't fit into the story you have in your head, you've already made a mistake. That just compounds. And then in this case, everything that came after that was built on that mistake, that foundation. So from someone who investigates these types of deaths, I will tell you that forming a narrative in your head or a theory of the crime or a theory of the death is crucial. But the problem is that a lot of investigators fall into the trap of finding evidence that fits their theory of the crime or theory of the death, rather than letting the evidence dictate the theory of the crime or theory of the death. So when I walk into a scene, I kind of try to visualize what happened, the person's movements leading up to the death, and that's my theory of the death or theory of the crime. But as the evidence is gathered and compiled, and as witness statements, stories, physical evidence comes in, you have to be willing to alter that narrative in your head to a level at which you might just have to eat crow and say, holy crap, I was totally wrong, or I was totally off, or it's a sign of a good investigator to admit when you've made a mistake, when you've done wrong, when you've hypothesized the wrong thing, but to double down on your shitty decisions or your shitty investigative practices and then go on the defensive about it, or the offensive about it, really, is just completely unacceptable. So from a professional standpoint, this case was mishandled from the start. I don't know what happened to this young man. Like I said, I'm not going to get into the theories with the sheriffs and the friends and the blah, blah, blah. But I will tell you that the official cause, the official manner, and the official story are predicated on a foundation of missteps and mistakes. So once again, thank you for listening. Episode 2 is going to drop soon. If you have a case you want me to look at, you can submit at Silas Night Author at gmail.com. You can comment down below whatever you want to do. I'll look into the cases, I'll look into the procedural errors, and we'll cover those. So thanks for listening. This is Silas Night, and this has been Buried.